Yeah. Well, I am with my dear old professor, Garry Trompf,
Yes, that's
who I've
good.
known for since I was an academic baby. I did my PhD under Garry, and it's finally the day where I've got him on the podcast at last, and we're having a conversation today about yourself, obviously, and the topic of religion, religious studies. And that's really the idea. As I said to you just off camera, off pre-recording, I have some questions, but obviously I know you well enough to kind of go with the flow. Though there are some interesting facts I didn't know, I have to admit. So
Good,
I
good.
might actually you do not need an introduction, surely, but I think maybe some of these things to kind of prompt the audience in recognition of everything you've done and where you've been. I think you were born a very long time ago,
Yeah.
well before my time.
Yeah. I'm a war baby.
War baby,
Yeah.
1940 in Melbourne.
Yes.
Yeah,
Not likely to have been born because my mum had a very bad infection
right.
after having my one of my elder brothers,
Yes,
and she had penicillin, probably the first civilian woman to have penicillin
I see.
in the world,
I see.
according to legend,
Wow,
at the Flores Laboratory in Richmond. That's why I barrack for the Richmond Football Club.
I see.
Down it's in a Melbourne suburb, as you probably know. And when she came good, she was told she could never have a baby again. But of course, she had me. So I'm sitting smiling, looking at you.
Glad.
So happy to be here and very honoured.
Oh, you're
Thank
very
you.
kind. You're very kind, Gary, and the pleasure's all mine. And I am also glad that you are here because you've made such an impact on my life and
Yeah.
career. So I'm eternally grateful. Um, now, I'm also very keen to hear a little bit about your experience and work in Papua New Guinea. We'll cover that. I have some questions, but I believe you were there in 72. That's correct.
Yes.
Doing field research across Melanesian communities.
Yes. I could say I started right from the word go.
Yeah.
In fact, I was given an orientation period of 6 months so that I could, yeah, go on a walking trek.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, that was a near-death experience because in the tropics, you can get an ulcer,
Right.
which I did,
Right.
going walking about 100k east of Port Moresby. And so by the time I got to Marshall Lagoon,
Yes.
my leg was blowing up and it would seem that I'd have to be cut off.
Wow.
But fortunately, for the uh, old boy, as I've become, the missions had Fijian nurses posted all the way back to Port Moresby when we got on a small vessel.
Yes.
And they may have got a bit of surprise, but I was injected in the buttocks every time we stopped going home so that I'd get better with penicillin.
Wow.
Penicillin again, you see?
Again. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see recurrence here,
Yeah,
which is
you'll be right there.
a very important point of your publishing. That we'll get to that in a minute. But am I right that you held the chair of history at the University of Papua New Guinea?
Yes,
Yes. Okay. And this is where you did your work on the famous payback systems on
yes,
retributive logic.
yes.
Correct.
But I had been working on aspects of that before I went to Papua New Guinea and
Okay.
Melanesia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you, I forgot to ask you, did you, University of Melbourne, Monash, Oxford, and Australian National University, does that ring a bell?
Yes,
These are
that's
where you
still there.
attended?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Um, So your work on Melanesian religions, I think published the title Melanesian Religions, published 1994, and then Payback in 2004, which was subtitled The Logic of Retribution in Melanesian Religions. So I have some questions regarding that. Now, importantly, for religious studies in Australia, 1978, the year I was born, you were appointed to the Faculty of Religious Studies at Sydney University, correct?
Yeah, the Department
Department.
of Religious Studies
Department of Religious Studies.
in the Faculty of Arts, yes, under the Foundation Professor, Eric Sharp.
Eric
I
Sharp.
first met him sitting up in a hospital at Gloucester House, actually, at Prince Alfred,
Right,
near the University of Sydney,
right.
after having a bypass coronary.
Oh my goodness.
And he wondered whether he could even go on with the job. And he hadn't been there long, only 1 year.
Right.
He called me out of the jungles of New Guinea. I turned up in a Land Cruiser quite late one evening, and the telephone was allegedly on in a sub-branch of the University of Papua New Guinea up in the Highlands,
Yes.
and they offered me the job up there.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I'll have you know that because he wasn't in good health,
Yeah.
Eric gave me the task of really teaching the first general course in comparative religion at the University of Sydney.
Wow.
And he took the year after that.
That's...
We started in those days from second year,
Yes.
the minor,
Oh, I see.
and
Okay.
he took third.
Wow.
And we took honours together.
Mm. Wow. And how old was Eric at that time? Do you remember?
Well, he was not retiring age, so
Mhm.
I would say 61 maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You're over there? Yeah, so that's how you came to the department. And then you, I think, officially left PNG in 1986, if I'm not mistaken. Um,
Well, I
leaving,
went there twice.
right, okay.
So I went from Sydney
Yes.
to take the chair
Oh, yeah.
in the middle of my time in Sydney. Before that, together with an interesting colleague from Melbourne, I was the first lecturer in religious studies in the history of the country, but offshore at a time when Papua New Guinea was not independent,
Mhm.
but part of Australia.
Oh, okay.
And everybody thought the Melanesians were so very religious that they ought to make these first appointments up there and test what religious studies was all about. I believe Queensland pipped Sydney for having an appointment, a senior appointment in religious studies, but not a chair.
That makes sense. Um, but you finally committed to religious studies at Sydney and went on to become head of department.
Yes,
Um, I've got the dates here, 1986 to 91. Does that sound correct?
that sounds right.
Okay.
Then
And
we
you,
turned into a school.
right, okay.
So we had heads of the school, which were not actually teaching religious studies, or they were only teaching them indirectly.
Right.
But we had the administrative tasks taken off our hands so we could get on to research.
Mhm.
You'd have to say that the Department of Studies in Religion over the years is very high powered
Mm,
in terms of research.
yeah.
It's pulled its weight much more than most departments, and you're part of that story because you did your doctorate and you published your doctorate. So
And it's all thanks to you. Now, I should say well, I should ask you. You probably have better knowledge. Um, Eric Sharp's appointment at Sydney was to kickstart religious studies, if I'm not mistaken.
yes. So what happened was Sir Bruce Williams, who happened to be the brother of one of my early teachers, who became the Dean of Divinity at Yale University.
Wow.
He got very keen on the idea of religious studies, saying it was about time we had this to link in with the Board of Studies in Divinity, which had been going for many years from Harper House, where there was a theological hall centered around a Presbyterian institution called St. Andrew's College.
Oh, yes, of course.
But by the time I arrived, very ecumenical, involving all denominations really, or at least the leading ones, including Cardinal Clancy at the time. So I was finding myself with Eric negotiating between setting up a department which was more like comparative religion in vision, because Eric had written a very famous book called Comparative Religion, A History.
Yes, yes.
And he was a bit wary about theology coming into the picture and letting the relative objectivity of comparative religion be left behind for theological proclivities of one kind or another, or in those days, affected by controversial figures like Barbara Thiering.
Okay.
There was an episode in our history in Sydney in which Barbara Thiering was touted as an expert in the Dead Sea Scrolls and Jesus. I don't think Eric liked the controversy surrounding the Board of Studies in that connection and wanted independence. But in the long run, we had to negotiate some kind of unity. And what happened was we set up, when I finished being the head of school, head of department, a school of religious studies.
Yes.
Administered by different people. First by James Tulip, who was an associate professor in English. He brought us to the Woolley building at the University of Sydney.
Marvellous. Love that building.
Yeah. And he was very good on religion and literature.
Right.
Yeah. We're talking about deceased persons who need to be sensitive.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the next thing that happened was that you received your own personal chair, and I think this was like a first personal chair as Professor of History of Ideas in the Department of Studies of Religion.
Well, it was the first for Sydney.
Yeah.
However, my thesis supervisor, my doctoral boss, so it's like our relationship earlier on, was the first professor in the history of ideas in the philosophy department at the ANU.
I see.
And it was he who called me when I had my first lectureship, which happened to be, by the way, in the University of Western Australia, to come and do a doctorate in the history of ideas, because I was virtually teaching it. I was teaching Renaissance, Reformation, and 17th century European history.
Right.
And it was basically from, Poggio the humanist to Isaac Newton and the beginning of this scientific revolution.
Yes.
And I was also in the West the first person to teach in a secular university biblical and patristic studies.
Wow.
Which was quite remarkable how Professor Austin of Classics allowed that course to take place in the Classics department. And I taught with an old teacher of mine, a Jesuit, Father Ted Storman. I did the biblical studies. It was mainly New Testament, but
yes.
And he did patristic studies. Yeah. And that was a breakthrough there.
You talked with a Jesuit.
Oh, yeah. Well,
what was that like?
I tell you, it's a funny thing.
Yes.
When I was in Oxford, because I did theology in Oxford.
Right.
This is why I was able to combine history and religious studies in the end.
Oh.
and some of the visiting positions I've had. Um, I had a very great scholar as my teacher, Frank Cross, who was the editor of the Oxford Dictionary of uh, uh, Church History. And you probably remember bringing Cross into lectures in case I forgot a name or something.
Mm.
And he couldn't be heard when we went to his lectures.
Right.
That was way back in the 66. And I was leaning forward and I was in the front row with 6 other people and I just couldn't pick out what he was saying because he sat at least 3 meters away
Mm.
and he didn't use a mic.
Mm.
So he was lecturing on a patristic text in Latin. I had to know this text well because we had exams with Latin texts, Greek and Hebrew texts.
Wow.
So I said, well, I'm not going to get anywhere here. So I went over to Campion Hall and sat under a Jesuit, a very lovely scholar who helped me get through that problem.
Mm.
And I've still got connections with them because I've written about Stormont.
Okay.
And I occasionally write off to Campion Hall and they love hearing from me. So anyway, that's not the only story about Jesuits in my life, but
I'd love to hear more.
The fact is that because I had this background in the University of Western Australia, Eugene Kamenka, who was the first professor in history of ideas at the ANU in Australia, first one in Australia, invited me to do a doctorate.
Okay.
Now he sacked a few people, but he kept me on, and we got on. Even though he was a white Russian atheistical Jew,
Wow.
we got on extremely well, bantering at one another at the morning and afternoon tea table, usually with a bunch of other atheists, and surprisingly held my own. They used to call me the young Methodist boy because I grew up mainly a Methodist in the country in Victoria, and to them I must have seemed a bit hick for growing up in the country.
Mm.
But in the end, I suppose it would be safe to say, because he said it to me over the phone a number of times, Kamenko admired my mind. He said so before he died. And when my turn for a chair came up at Sydney, I said, well, look, there's nobody holding that position in the ANU. Can we transfer it here to Sydney? So it was pretty amazing. That was 1995, and I stayed in that position until I retired.
That's right. That's right.
And now I'm an emeritus. In fact, I think I've been the only emeritus in a professor in the history of ideas in the world for quite some space of time, or at least in the Anglophone world. Very funny, isn't it?
It's delightful.
Yeah, very strange position to hold.
Well,
But within the Department of Religious Studies,
oh, I see. Yeah.
because I take it very seriously that most of the significant ideas of the world started with religious questioning and religious
Indeed.
traditions.
And we're going to come to this now, because I'm going to now jump straight into the questions I have for you, Garry. I mean, there's significant things I'm sure we'll touch on anyway. So I want to start the beginning, or as I should say, begin at the beginning.
Okay.
What first drew you to the study of religions and history of ideas? Now, before you answer, was there a moment or influence early in your education that set you on this path?
Right. Unfortunately, I had a mother who was very learned in the Bible and storytelling within the Christian tradition.
Mm.
Um, she was the dux of the Corroor Anglican School in the suburbs of Melbourne. She was the one who was so beautiful, they said, but we have to give her penicillin
Wow.
to save her life. She was very, very important in personal instruction
Mm.
about matters biblical. In those days, Melbourne was a safe haven also for Jewish people
Okay.
because of the Holocaust.
Mm.
So we had a surrogate Jewish family come up to stay with us in Sassafras because we moved out of Melbourne into the country,
Okay.
into the Dandenong Ranges. So Auntie Anita and her daughter Naomi, I remember them especially in that family, but there were 5 of them. They put us in touch with Judaism
Mm.
and the close relationship between Christianity and Judaism.
Mm.
She survived the Holocaust because, this is Auntie Anita, because she was married to a Quisling.
What's that?
A Quisling is somebody who collaborates with the Nazis
Ah.
in order to allow his family to survive, namely his wife, in this case.
Mm-hmm.
She may have had an earlier child, but I don't know. That man, whoever he was, I do not know whether he was in the end killed or what.
Mm.
But that's how Auntie Anita survived the gas chambers. She kept on saying, I was about to go into the chamber before I was saved.
Wow.
But of course, that might be an expression
Yes.
of the situation she was in.
Yes.
It's funny because of that connection, and because I was always late for school, because I did go to school at Wesley College, a very prestigious school in St Kilda, Melbourne. And I was always late for chapel. I ended up waiting outside for that to be over with Jewish boys. Some of them from very wealthy families, including a young Rockman, for example, who I had a good friendship with.
Right.
So comparative religion sort of flowed from this Jewish connection for a start, and it intensified because I did write very small books when I was young, because up in Sassafras there was not much to do. And as a loner, my mum was good enough to let me have the right to cut pictures out of many magazines she kept, which had pictures of different parts of the world. So from about, I suppose, 5th, 6th grade, primary school, I was making books and writing about these interesting places. And it kind of kept on going there as well. So naturally, with all that kind of impetus, I was very good at divinity at the school.
Yeah.
Usually tops in divinity. And in the end, I got a first class honours for matriculation, as we called it then, the equivalent of HSC.
Where was this at?
That was Wesley College.
Wesley College.
Yeah, I went for many years to Wesley College, pretty well my whole schooling. And I got a first in Greek and Roman history.
Right.
So you can imagine that I got into the classics during my school years. I got into Aboriginal stuff because in social studies, No, Australian history.
Australians.
Bull Rush of the Nulla Nulla tribe, as we used to call. Mr. Rush said, look, I'm leaving you alone. I'm not going to teach you for matriculation, which was a surprise. You just follow what you want to in Australian history. So I followed the Aboriginal course. I went to the Melbourne Public Library when I shouldn't have actually. Sometimes I should have been at school. And I studied very carefully all the official documents about the government relationship to the Aborigines for my matriculation.
Wow.
Didn't do so well because maybe I was a bit of a loner on that score. But that collection of documents later was borrowed by my PhD student, Aboriginal PhD student Anne Patel Gray, and out of a lot of its contents came the book, The Great White Flood, the most important history of racism that's been done by an Aboriginal person in this country. Right. She's now working for World Vision of all places, but she became Professor of Divinity in Melbourne for a very short time, and then they decided not to fund it. But yeah, it was an interesting, very hard-nosed student to have. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, this is all compounding into what happened to me in the course of time in my undergraduate career, because I would always choose religious topics when I was doing pure history and English literature.
I see.
I mean, my first tutor was a lovely lady, Rebel, who became actually our acting head of school because she had interest in religion. And she's written a book on Dickens and religion.
Oh, there you go.
She came to Sydney. She was my first tutor at Melbourne, and she used to complain I was too preoccupied with history and kind of philosophical religious topics. That was in the English department, but it was even worse for the historians to have to put up with me. But still, I ended up doing my honours year in this way. This is very important because it's kind of pretty determinant in my interests. I studied my main honours subject with the great John Mulvaney, the founder of Pacific prehistory. And so this led me into Pacific archaeology. There was no department of anthropology in Melbourne in those days. That was your only way.
Okay.
And I got a first in that. Well, I got a first in everything, but I remember that was very important for me. There was a permission given to me that I should do my honours thesis on a topic that was never done by anybody in the history of the history department, then run by the great Max Crawford, that I do it in biblical studies.
Okay.
And that my thesis was called The Political Standpoint of the Historical Jesus.
Wow.
And a lot of it was on the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Wow.
And I got into Dead Sea Scroll research that way. As you probably know, I've published quite a lot on Qumran.
Yes.
And the place where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. And I had quite a few people wrestle with what I was trying to say, but because I was doing history and not doing theology. But at the same time, there were interesting questions about whether Jesus had a political stance or not. Inevitably.
Interesting.
I mean, you and I have talked about Islam, for example, as being inevitably religious and political at the same time.
Yes.
Jesus was inevitably political because of his stance over colonialism and the intrusion of the Pharisees into Galilee as, expecting to Judaize places which had been contaminated by the Gentiles, because Galilee was one of the breadbaskets of the Roman Empire, and there were plenty of Greeks and Latins and other people, Syrians, no doubt, around the place. So Jesus was on a kind of frontier of the Jewish world anyway, and what we call the Gentile mission was already part of his focus. He was dealing with Roman leaders, Samaritans, Canaanite woman,
Yes.
and so on.
Yes.
So anyway, I think the most important thing I learned in that was the one thing you could be certain about Jesus was that he died. Now, this is a very strange saying by the guy who helped me supervise that thesis.
Okay.
And he was the professor of Semitic studies, a Welshman who came from the UK to this unique position. It was a unique department at that time. John Bowman.
Okay.
He was a brilliant student of the Samaritan language. Because he was there, I started to study Hebrew under a great Finnish man called Mertinen, who's one of the great grammarians of Hebrew, who happened to be getting a position under Bowman. So I began studying Hebrew there.
What institution? Which institution?
Pardon?
Which institution?
This is all University of Melbourne.
Melbourne, okay.
I was doing my honours in a very interesting subject as far as I was concerned, but very unusual as far as the history department was concerned, because I had to collaborate with people in the Semitic Studies department, and they were not used to that. And I was studying Greek at the same time, because you can't really study the biblical stuff without these languages. I studied Syriac under a man called Wilcox, a brilliant Syriac scholar who happened to be teaching in Melbourne at the time. And guess what? I studied under the first person who had a position in comparative religion in the whole history of Australia, a man called Bolger, who was a Baptist but very learned man in the reception of the Bible in the early centuries of Christianity.
Incredible.
And I was so blessed to have all these people stimulating me. And my goodness, I also had a special interest in the philosophy of history.
Yes.
Well, this is my honour sheet. There were so many things going on that determined my interests.
Yes.
And this is like the history of ideas.
Yes.
This is where I met people like Benedetto Croce and Robin Collingwood, who were kind of idealistic philosophers, completely different from the British empirical philosophies that had infected the Australian philosophy scene. In which I detected early on a very anti-historical tendency, because they used these examples extrapolating out of the blue on ethical or epistemological issues, which really had no rooting in historical context. But Croce and Collingwood were great from that point of view. And of course, Croce, it was affecting Collingwood, so I studied both.
Okay.
And in that way, I learned about aesthetics, because they were interested in aesthetics, both of those people. I got interested in the theory of purposive causes, that people were worried about causation, whether there really was causation, because David Hume asked that question long ago. But Collingwood seemed to solve that problem for me, because instead of being a determinist, as an idealist, he went straight for the idea of the human mind having purposive motives.
Oh, I see. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Clever.
Very important, because when I came to get into payback stuff, You had to know,
Hmm.
well, you still have to know
Hmm.
what people don't like in others.
Yeah.
Do they have something against others,
Mm.
or they really are built up by others?
Mm.
And this actually, you might say this is the conditioning,
Mm.
but in fact, you have to make up your own mind
Yes.
as to what you do and how you act upon
Exactly.
these likes and dislikes.
Exactly.
And this is crucial for payback theory as I've developed it.
Right.
Yeah. Uh,
Now, before, yeah, go. Sorry.
well, these are all the things that happen so early on
Yeah, yeah.
to give you a sense of the building blocks
Yeah, no,
behind my thinking.
all makes sense.
Okay. Uh,
Um, so when you mentioned uh, philosophy of history,
yes,
um, obviously a great appreciation you have for Giambattista Vico,
yes.
yes, because I remember so
Well,
much of your lectures.
he's my hero. He's the man who knew that the Queen of the Sciences
Yeah,
was the history of ideas
yeah,
because, everything is, well, it's idealism again that comes into that.
yeah.
In this, and you take ideas very seriously,
Mm,
and because after all, it's millions of people thinking out their lives, and
mm,
uh, Biko tells you if you're doing history or if you're doing any kind of religious studies, you've got to get inside the layers of the mind.
mm,
Colin was all about getting inside the mind of the agent.
mm.
Um, and there's a funny story I'll tell you about that later on. But he was picking up on Vico, but Vico is very subtle. He's perhaps the most difficult intellectual in the history of Western thought. But he will teach you about what he called three layers of the mind, almost like a Trinitarian vision of the mind. And they're all very influential in the history of ideas. The first um, understanding is that when humans came into being, they were well, the equivalent of a state of innocence to him, which was actually without language in a way,
Mm,
with minimal language.
mm.
And everything was like a child having immediate experience of the world.
Yeah.
And everything in his thinking was immediately sacred, really,
Mm.
because it was unbelievable.
Mm, mm,
You see,
mm,
so you start by understanding that in your own thinking,
mm,
as well as the thinking of humanity as a whole,
mm.
the earliest layer is incredibly primeval and it'll never leave you.
Yeah.
And of course, this leads to Freud as well,
Mm.
because of you could have traumas, you could have frightening experiences, well, that'll increase your religiosity or fear of the gods, as it were.
Mm.
Um, the thunderbolts,
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but the second configuration that comes into the mind is that of a kind of peremptory confidence
Okay.
that will produce the first laws, but out of people who are chosen to be leaders because of their sheer strength.
Mm.
They're kind of um, desperately wanting to hold on to power, so they'll show how great they are by dictating their will, by using other men to impose uh, the reach of their influence.
Mm.
But this is actually a state of mind more generally across humanity in Vico, which will lead on to Freud, like I don't know whether you know the omnipotence of thought in the child in Freudian and Jungian thinking. So Vico is very important, especially because you eventually arrive at maturity, and your last layer is that of, reflection, I suppose, is the crucial word for it.
Mm.
You start thinking,
Mm.
and you figure out what you're doing.
Mm.
So the purposive thing comes into that.
Mm.
Uh, you are determined by these other layers, and they never leave you alone. So you can get aggressive, for example,
Mm.
or you can impose your authority on somebody who's weak,
Mhm.
or you can pay somebody back because they, you know, they become your enemy.
Mm.
Um, the reflective side, however, will lead to restraint of all those things that
I see.
are prior,
Mm.
so that you don't see things within immediacy anymore, unfortunately. That leads, by the way, to phenomenology, where seeing things as they are.
Yes.
Alsalcher's, as in Husserl's phenomenology. This is the background to all this.
I see.
This is how you trace things back to a crucial figure in the history of ideas and explain why I'm a neo-Vikian.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
Uh-huh.
But reflection, however, is related to civility, in
Yes.
which you're very interested in.
Yes.
The settling down of laws.
Mm.
So Vico was a professor of jurisprudence
Oh,
at the University of Naples.
right.
So he was into the theory of law,
Mm.
and especially the theory of Christian law. He wanted to know, for example, why, the English thinkers at the time were annoying him a bit on this,
Mm.
Hebrew law was not accepted in Christianity as the basis for civil law.
Oh, I see.
Why was it? It was Roman law.
Yes.
And he soon found out. I mean, part of the reason for that was that Roman law was baptized by Christian emperors from
Yeah.
Constantine to Justinian.
Mm-hmm.
But the principles of Roman law were already so good that they could be baptized. So there were great thinkers there like Cicero and
Yes.
Ulpian that you could say were like the Platos of Christian philosophy. They were the jurisconsults of Christian jurisprudence.
Yeah.
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 Anyway,
I like
enough
it.
about
No,
Vico.
no, I love it. I could hear more. I mean, I adored your lectures on every time you spoke about Vico, and it has really impacted me in a big way. Um, so thank you for sharing that. Let's get to the idea of recurrence. And
Well, Vico
you
is
will,
a theorist of spiral,
indeed.
so he is about recurrence.
Yeah.
But going back to my undergraduate days,
Yeah.
uh, I did ancient history as part of my um, honours degree
Okay.
and finished off with prehistory rather than classical history.
Interesting.
And I studied under a man called O'Brien with ancient history. I mean, he came into the philosophy of history course as well. I can remember vividly he was so tired one morning that he said, "Today's lecture will be on," and then his head hit the table. We thought he died. Suddenly, after 5 minutes, he rose up and said, "Herodotus." Well, um, he got me to write about an ancient historian, a Greek historian of the Roman Empire called Polybius.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, Polybius is the framer of the famed cycle of governments,
Mhm.
which I've written a lot about,
Mhm.
which is basically a sequence of um, constitutional changes from a strong man
Yes.
through kingship, lapsing into tyranny, aristocracy, lapsing into oligarchy, democracy, lapsing into anarchy
Wow.
or ochlocracy, and going back to the strong man again.
Oh, I
Okay?
love that.
Yeah, the demagogic type,
Yeah.
like we're having now,
Mm.
possibly Trump trying to solve this world as the strong man.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Mhm.
I got heavily into Polybius in such a way that I thought when I went to work under Kamenka
Mm.
years later,
Yeah.
that I would do my doctorate on the idea of historical recurrence with figures like Polybius
Oh, okay.
and Machiavelli, who picked up on the cycle of governments. And I'm still writing about other people later on, Harrington, for example.
Yes.
Uh, so uh, the, uh, the stepping stones for writing about recurrence are manifold in the sense that I feel I want to write about the most important ideas that I believe exist in the human mind.
Okay.
And I believe there are only two that you whittle down.
Please.
And these are recurrence
Right.
and payback. So I'm working on the big ones. And
I have to agree.
yeah, so it's a tricky area. So what can I say about both of those ideas? First of all, unless you have repetition, you can't work out what is going on in the world. You can't see any pattern, any uniformity.
Exactly.
You can't operate. So it's just so basic. Science depends on being able to repeat your, your first test.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, when it comes to the philosophy of history, the rise and fall of empires is the really big issue for any polity to face or any imperial power. I mean, I've grown up when most of the globe was painted red, according to my Collins school atlas. And now that's very much diminished. So you would think, well, the British Empire declined. But of course, there's a soft landing because of the Commonwealth of Nations and because of all the linkages that are left over from that empire, which is very interesting. In the case of the unexpected collapse of the USSR and the Soviet Empire, there is this, there was a kind of tacit acceptance of connection between the former members. When Russia went back into itself, it kept Siberia. Belarus is very close to it. But we did not expect Putin to come into the figure to imagine that there could be a retrieval of the Soviet imperial, or in fact, the earlier Peter the Great type of Russian empire, because he's got Russian Orthodox thinking in a strange way, and he's working with a patriarch who was a stooge of the Politburo anyway. I mean, he was in charge of the KGB, and Kirill was, the man who sort of satisfied the masses that the Russian Orthodoxy was still there, and it's got very unsettling for him because he's got this great vision of a comfortable decline or a very splendid resurgence of something that used to be. So it's the idea of maybe having fallen but rising again. It's recurrence, basically with the same kind of paradigm. Make America great again is, it's pretty imperialistic when you come to it because, you're controlling so much of Latin America. You're controlling the Middle East.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, the pure oil comes from Kurdistan, not from these other places that are being bombed. I mean, if Iran starts bombing Kurdistan, all hell will pay because engine oil. You got to have engine oil, not petrol. So, and the Americans protect these places, Herbal. I mean, there are so many American supermarkets there that it's not funny. Anyway,
We digress.
recurrence is the old idea of rise and fall of empires, going back to Polybius again, through to Gibbon, the decline and fall of the Roman Empire,
Yes.
to many, many writers of today who are going hammer and tongs into this topic.
Hmm. So recurrence, another way of saying cyclical history, because this is how I remember it. Also, you speaking about.
Yeah, rise and fall, cyclical.
Yeah.
Cycle of governments, cyclical. But no, it's not only that. So this is where I was into payback much earlier.
Hmm.
You see, the ancient Hebrews, picking up also from Mesopotamian and Egyptian thinking,
Yeah.
they had the model that if you followed the commands of God,
Yep.
you would be rewarded.
Mm.
It became a kind of orthopraxis. And if you went against the will of God, against the Torah, this bad things would come of you. And so, for example, the Babylonian exile was put down to disobedience, to um, the going after the Baals and Asherah goddess figures and so on. So leaving the one true God to be compromised.
Yes.
And as you know, in the history of Persia,
Yes.
The great kings as Darius and Xerxes, they went under the banner of Ahura Mazda, not the only Persian god, but I mean, they were the kind of spiritual embodiment, and you had to obey them. And if you didn't, if they didn't follow Ahura Mazda and you didn't follow them, you're going to run into deep problems, like the destruction of the Persian fleet at Salamis under the Greeks. So this is reciprocal recurrence. It's the idea that there are consequences flowing from certain actions that don't necessarily work themselves out cyclically. They can have aspects of the cycle of alternation and oscillation, but no, they're more discrete. In you single them out as a different paradigm of recurrence. Imitation is another different paradigm.
Yep.
So recurrence is a body of ideas.
Yep.
It can, in one author like Polybius, manifest in multiple forms and have a leading idea that's cyclical. But yeah. So I want to impress upon you, for example, that science really has its roots in this retributive element, so that when Heraclitus talks about struggle or eros, this is the word for tribal warfare. When Anaximander talks about elements paying each other back, the language of tribal warfare, Homeric stuff.
Yes.
And unless you have the principle of reciprocity, you will not have science as we understand it. And this is a special form of recurrence. It doesn't have to be a biocycle or work itself out. And an expression like there's even a Tromphian cycle, nothing to do with me. But in terms of, well, the double helix is kind of more an example of reciprocal model. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Appreciate that. So your work in Papua New Guinea brings about the book Payback. Yes? Is it correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. In which you discuss retributive logic.
Yeah.
And you explain it through your knowledge of fieldwork research. And can you tell me a little bit more about how this, so the idea of historical recurrence in Western thought came before Payback. Is this correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So what is the relationship between these two books? How does the second one?
I've been thinking about retributive logic, as I've just explained,
Mm.
from the biblical stuff, particularly Tanakh or the Old Testament, um, and Josephus,
Mhm.
uh, before I went to Papua New Guinea.
Mhm.
How I got to Papua New Guinea
Mhm.
is kind of a mystery in itself. Personally, spiritual commitment way back when I was uh, doing first year university, when uh, I was kind of mysteriously led to meet a missionary working in Vanuatu
Right.
who asked me to go to a conference. And at the end of that conference, asked me whether I would commit myself to
Wow.
work in the Pacific.
Wow.
And I had no idea that this was going to happen.
Mm.
I had no idea. However, I did Pacific history, prehistory, which involved some history, Pacific history, voyaging and everything, exploration. Um, but when I was doing my PhD on recurrence at the ANU under Kamenka uh, in the philosophy department, and there was very great historians of ideas around, like John Passmore, for example. He was part supervisor of me. Um, he wrote the idea of perfectibility and other important books on ideas on the environment. Um, and there was Robert Banks, who was writing on biblical stuff, fortunately, at that time. Um, I was sitting in my office, uh, and a man came in and said, look, there are two lectureships being offered in uh, the University of Papua New Guinea, which is pretty recently developed. And I think I can get one because I've written a book on Papuan religion. This was a man who later became a great Africanist, John Parrott, but he did write first on Papua New Guinea, and he was going backwards and forwards there from the research school in Pacific Studies at the ANU. He said, look, why don't you apply for the other one, because you've got credentials that could fit, because you're trained in these two fields, as it were,
Mm.
because they want somebody who knows the biblical stuff because of the missions,
Mm.
and they want somebody who knows their culture,
Ah.
because it's unhealthy to you know not try and change people as if their culture doesn't exist.
Mm.
So um, I I didn't know what to do. So I sat in my office again the following day, and I looked down, and there was a man from the law department who never spoke to anybody at tea time at the ANU, when we all were in a big, deep discussion, getting to know one another every day. And he was sitting there alone again, as he sat alone always at tea time, nobody ever talking to him. So I said, look, I think I'll go down and ask this guy about this job. I said, hello, sir. I'm not sure. I know who you are. He said, well, sit down, Trompf. Yeah, young Garry learned, I don't even remember his name now, but he was a lovely guy. And I asked him about this job, and he just had a straight answer. He said, Garry, we were on first name uh, terms very quickly. Garry, if you don't apply for a job now, you'll never get one.
Mm.
And he was dead right.
Mm.
Because at that point, Australia was not doing that well, and the job markets for academics was drying up rapidly.
Mm.
And so I applied, and Parrott did not get the job.
Wow.
I got the job with another man from Melbourne who was a Syriac specialist, Carl Lurliger, and we became the first two lecturers in religious studies in the history of the country. And like I said, we were given 6 months leave to do what we did, and I learned a lot in the 6 months. But I mean, for example, uh, I did go down to Marshall Lagoon
Right.
and got that terrible infection and got back safely. But in the process, I got to know the man who became administrator of health later on in the government. He was a young
Oh, wow.
student of mine. And after I gave my first lecture, which was showing pictures of Jerusalem,
Oh.
he came up to me and said, "Dr. Trompf, have you been to heaven?" I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, we think Jerusalem in heaven."
Amazing.
So, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, so, yeah, so when we listen to the radio, when they talk about Jerusalem, we think they're talking about heaven.
Mm.
So that was all very fascinating. All the work you had to do to help students orient towards the sort of way we do scholarship. It all builds up into a discussion of modes of thinking.
Yes.
And Vico is so important. I mean, I
Yes.
don't say much about Vico in that particular book, but so important in the layers of thinking you have to put up with. Myth, for example, and legend belong to the stuff of the peremptory heroic time, the age of the heroes, according to Vico. Well, you'd have students, and I occasionally say, we're having trouble here teaching you history, aren't we, when I was professor of history, because you might not think like people who do history. You might think more mythologically. And very soon after, knock at the door. Yeah, yes. I just don't understand what you're talking about. I think mythologically. And this man was speaking 8 different languages within his own culture, the Osaro culture, because you have to use a different language for different people who are related to you, finally, or maybe they're your enemy, or maybe they're a potentially enemy tribe, or if you're talking to your parents, you'd have a special language, and a make-believe one for peers. I mean, this is one of the most complex cultures on earth. The subject of a book by Reed called The Hidden Valley, and the complexities of the mind that you're coming across when you go anywhere in the country. The languages you have to learn afresh, at least basically to say hello to somebody if you're doing work. So I know many languages in terms of their beginnings, but I had to definitely learn 2 linguae francae, Pidgin English or Neo-Melanesian, which is Creole, and Hirimotu, which is a form of the Motu language of Port Moresby that used by cultures along the Papuan coast.
Okay.
And if you don't have those languages, you're not going to get anywhere with field work. And so it's only with places where I really spent a lot of time, like in the Wagi Valley, way up in the highlands of New Guinea, and in the Papuan Highlands, there I had to learn vernacular languages more in depth. And it was actually by being invited into the highlands that I was in tribal warfare country.
Oh.
And so retribution became the big issue. Getting up in the morning and asking what dreams did people have, and whether they were good for fighting or whether they were dangerous.
Wow.
Whether we should invite such and such a tribe to the big pig kill sacrifice, where up to 200 pigs will be killed, because we need them to be our allies rather than to be ambiguously, possibly our enemy. The thinking about, daily thinking about payback in its gift and revengeful aspects was so patent that I thought, well, I can't write completely about any of these cultures. They're just so rich.
Mhm.
Well, I'll stick to a theme and I'll see whether this theme translates
Mhm.
around across the board.
Yeah.
And of course, I was finding myself dealing with just a host of warrior religions,
Mhm.
warrior cultures, languages in which usually the word revenge and punishment were the same word, just like Nietzsche and Rach, and the genealogy of morals. And it just kept on going. I mean, the book In Search of Origins, which is another work we should talk about, mentions how I really believe this kind of thinking belongs to a very early layer of humanity and towards the hard-nosed beginnings of religion as such and reliance on the ancestors and spiritual beings in conflict,
Mhm.
yeah, and survival,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
So not only does science have its origins in uh, tribal warfare language
Yeah.
or Homeric type language, if you take science to philosophy of it anyway, to have begun with the Greeks, but you could say religion rises out of the best of religion rises out of the resistance to standard retributive logics in any culture,
Okay.
a transcendence of
Okay.
these things,
Okay.
a bettering of that mode of thinking where, well, you're attaining to nirvana, you're completely outside of the samsaric system, not only because you don't have cravings for getting back at anybody or
Mm.
getting gifts from somebody, but you get even beyond the practice of uh, monastic life itself
Mm.
to a completely
Mm.
uh, beyond beyond state.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's remarkable. I think that's a very crucial point that you're outlining because I was going to ask you how did Melanesian your fieldwork in Melanesia influence the way that you thought about religion and religious culture, and I think you just gave the answer in a way, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, yes, and the trouble is, people who do comparative religion forget about
Yeah.
the place where 1/4 of the known religions of the human species are found,
Mm.
namely Oceania,
Mm.
mainly Melanesia,
Mm.
but also Aboriginal Australia,
Mm.
and just to a lesser extent Polynesia and Micronesia because they're Austronesian and they have many similarities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and why do we forget about
yeah.
these? They I'm not saying they necessarily give you the answer to the origins of religion,
Mm.
but they set you in an interesting direction, heuristically.
Mm.
I don't believe we can solve all the problems of origins or of the interrelationships between religions,
Okay.
but we have heuristic devices to help. And if we don't acknowledge things we've been neglecting, we won't get to the answers. We've got to go deeply into primal stuff.
Hmm.
I mean, it's like O'Brien when he gave that lecture about Herodotus in the end. I notice about Herodotus that he's like an anthropologist in antiquity.
Okay.
You see, because he was onto the big religions of
Mm.
Zoroastrianism and the Greeks,
Mm.
and Delphi and its oracle and so on. But he tells you about all these minor places and what beliefs they had.
Okay.
Oh, he has Egypt, of course, but on the way to Egypt, you've got places like Lydia. You see, well, that's leftover Hittite stuff. You know,
Yes.
And there are minor city-states. He mentions that don't have any connection with it, or like Sparta or Athens. We've got to be aware of the building blocks of the bigger unities that start everything off. And I suspect these are very, very strange often. So, yeah. They're not, they're not reflective in the obvious sense. You can't work them out by Oxbridge logic, and you've got to see how they have logics of their own, but belong to different layers of consciousness. I'm losing my voice now.
You can take a pause. Almost there.
I remember when I first had my lectureship in Sydney and came down from New Guinea, John Bacon, the logician from America, very learned man, was next door. And I told him there's not one logic, because he was writing books on logic that were Oxbridgian or Sorbonnian or Harvardian.
Yes.
The same thing. And he refused to take into account that there are folk logics, like retributive logics, of great varieties that show different manners of semantics in language that you have to get used to when you're dealing with all the great breadth of humanity. So if you go deeply into European languages that are closer to antiquity, like Polish, for example, and look at their payback language, you'll find they're kind of closer to the Papua New Guinean mode than, say, French, which is kind of connected more to Latin culture.
Okay.
We are lucky in English, we have the Norman and the Anglo-Saxon, so we're in touch with the Viking payback language as well. Very simple. It was like payback. Yeah. And, we have to appreciate that the Slavs will have this language that we're missing out on when we want to talk to Putin. So that in diplomacy, if you do not have knowledge of payback language, you are hopelessly out of touch with reality. That's why I want to set up a website, a free website for an encyclopedia of payback.
Okay.
Where every culture could be represented. But it's still impossible task. I'd have to start it.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess you could get it going and it could accumulate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
As it goes along.
Yeah.
It's doable.
So we have a lot of language, like deterrence, for example, diplomatic language of payback. Suddenly you'll find an Israeli who'll tell you, well, look, we don't forgive those who are against us. We're not like that. We're not Christians, and they'll admit it. And they will teach their soldiers that they are against the Amalek, which is a general description of any enemy of Israel. The Amalekites from the days of Samuel. And so unless you're used to how the Israelis think in Old Testament terms when it comes to warfare, you'll get nowhere. Yeah.
I think this is all
they have
fundamental.
Their Shimshon dolls in their fighter planes, the Samson dolls. So Samson, the strongman, becomes a heroic figure out of legend. Yeah.
You broke the pillars. collapsed the whole
Yeah,
place.
yeah, yeah,
Took them all out.
yeah.
Oh dear. Um, I would say that's an early episode of Payback in the Bible.
This is where I began
Mm,
thinking about these issues because
mm,
you see, I'm an arrant pacifist. I
mm.
must explain to you,
Yes,
I've
please.
learned pacifism, especially from the Quakers.
Yes.
Uh, so when I was uh, appointed to the lectureship in Sydney, that was the first lectureship in religious studies at the University of Sydney, I was also asked if I could be the vice master of Wesley College, a residential college,
Right.
uh,
Yes.
then uh, turned Uniting Church, but formerly Methodist, Wesley College, and not my school, but at the University of Sydney, not in Melbourne, but now here where we are. The um, wife of the master, I mean, the master, the Reverend Dr. Udy, he was pacifistic enough because he worked with Martin Luther King
Ah,
Jr.,
okay.
but his wife was a Quaker.
Mm.
And so after chapel, which was earlier, we'd hive off to a Quaker meeting at Surrey Hills in a very old building from colonial times, almost as if it was going to collapse. Uh, so, I mean, I'd heard about the Quakers before. They have no ritual.
Mm,
They just and they allow women to speak.
mm.
You respond to the Spirit of God.
Yes.
Uh, well, I've developed because of the Quakers uh, kind of three basic tenets that would be kind of my absolutes, as it were, as values.
Okay.
And the first is peace with justice.
Mm.
So peace has actually become, through the Quakers, through the longest standing peace lobby in the history of the world, pretty fundamental for my life orientation.
Okay.
I've had to face a lot of, uh, conflict.
Yes.
I mean, actually, the first person to uh, shoot at me was an Israeli soldier
Really?
as I was approaching Atlas Castle, where a whole lot of bombs were kept in Israel. I mean, Israel, the Jewish thing is very important for me because going back to Auntie Anita, for
Yes.
example, I suppose my first girlfriend was her daughter, Naomi.
Right.
Uh, the first girl I accidentally saw with nothing on because she was staying at our place
Right.
and got into some distress. But, later on, she committed suicide in Israel in the Six-Day War
Oh no.
for in Israeli security. So, I got these special connections,
Mm.
good and bad,
Mm.
with the development of Israel. I mean, with the recurrence, I should explain to you, there are two great nations in the history of the world that you call the resuscitation of nations.
Okay.
And that's a recurrence paradigm,
Mm.
the resuscitation of a whole nation.
Okay.
These are Greece and Israel,
Okay.
the very nations that are at the base of Western culture
Mm.
in my modeling,
Mhm.
the classical and the Hebraic.
Okay.
So you got from the 1820s the revival of Greece, Hellas,
Mhm.
out of the Ottoman Empire,
Yes.
and it's still going, but pretty right wing, I can tell you that much. And you've got Israel in the 1946 situation where suddenly
Yeah.
you've got so many post-Holocaust people coming and taking over the land, and there's a kind of millenarian beginning to all that.
Yes.
Actually, it's very interesting. So I mean, I went to Israel when I was very young. I had two passports, got in there in 1963. And, the West Bank had not been taken,
Mm,
Old Jerusalem had not been taken. So I saw the incredibly biblical flavor of the place before.
mhm,
It's kind of modernized, really, an amazing place. Galilee,
mm,
and I don't know what the hell has been going on since. But yeah, uh, you saw the making of a new nation,
mm.
Israel. You saw it. It's just a buzz of it, intense activity.
Yeah.
New cities being built. Uh, Haifa was like the classic case of um, a class dimension where you had
Mm,
the rich Israelis on top. You had the Sephardi
mm.
Jews, the Ashkenazis on top, sorry, the rich
Oh, yes,
Western
of course.
Jews,
Yeah.
the Sephardis in
Yeah.
the middle,
Yeah.
and your Palestinian lot down by the seaport
Mm,
among the rats,
mm.
as I noticed.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was, there are many things I could talk about there, but where retribution comes in to this is, I suppose, because people had to be um, displaced,
Mm,
and refugee camps had to be created. And when Israel had been created, they were creating the biggest payback population
mm,
probably in modern world history,
mm.
because the bitterness of people in the camps of Beirut and Tripoli, uh, you know, if there was a possibility of getting the land back,
Mm,
they'd be ready to really take revenge
mm,
on the creation of Israel. And it, you know, we don't talk about this.
mm,
No one. And Hamas, uh, it's built into their very existence, I suppose, because they've been bombed so many times, to be generally very anti-Israeli, and Hamas is just the kind of expression of revenge. And it's understandable why you've got somebody like Richard Landis now sitting in modern Jerusalem, you know, following the press
mhm,
about Hamas and Hezbollah, and saying, oh, anything that's not in favor of Israel, this is lethal journalism,
mm.
because when you're sitting there in Israel, you're surrounded by the prospect of revenge all the time.
Yeah.
It's just overwhelming.
Yeah.
So this is where payback theory and understanding modern conflict becomes crucial.
100%. Completely agree. In terms of the application of your thesis on payback.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, you've already demonstrated this over and over again in your various fieldworks.
Well, I am writing a book called Religion and Politics.
Okay,
Yeah,
this is going to be crucial.
yeah, yeah. So people don't understand religion and politics because
Mm,
my generation never studied religion,
mm.
basically. This is what's made me, given me a bit of an advantage in terms of addressing that side of things.
So that's going to be a crucial book. But in terms of if you can, I'm puzzled by one thing you said in terms of peace, pacifism, and justice. So peace and justice.
Yeah.
How do these go together in your mind?
Uh,
And then I have a question for you. Okay, final
well,
question.
personally, I'm an arrant pacifist.
Yes.
So far, I've successfully um, negotiated myself out of very tricky circumstances
Mm.
by diversionary tactics, or uh, like somebody is going to attack you. So, wait a minute, don't I know your father?
Ah,
You know what I
okay.
mean?
Yeah.
And I am the adjunct professor in peace and conflict studies
Yes.
at the University of Sydney. So I taught strategies for peace. You have to, when you have conflict, you have to resolve things as best you can by commissions of admission or reconciliation. And if you can't, they just go on and on and on indefinitely, like in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's, this is, by the way, I got onto peace because you can't have true peace also without a just settlement. So the question, say, of Palestine not being honoured, obviously, is a question of justice. I mean, there's so much injustice with regard to the bombing and withdrawal of aid and all this sort of stuff comes into it. That's obvious, but the final peace has to be a just peace in any long-term settlement.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's very difficult in that part of the world. Very difficult. But in other parts, it seems to have, like in Rwanda, it seems to be, in South Africa, for example, holding. Seems to be holding. But you can never tell, of course, in places like the Congo. Could go on and on for yonks. Anyway, I have these three absolutes.
Okay.
The other one is love as unconditional goodwill.
Yes, I remember this one.
Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be unconditional in this absolute, complete sense that you don't, in the immediate sense, teach somebody a lesson and say, no, you can't get away with this. But unconquerable goodwill is possibly a better way of putting it than unconditional, in the sense that in the end, you've got to stand by what you take to be the highest form of love and commit yourself to it without letting anybody compromise it for yourself and make you kind of weak in a way and conquered because you've let them off the hook. That's a conditional part of it in a way. More the unconquerable part of it takes into account the heroic quality. Actually, it's a lively kind of spiritual conquest in a way. You got to hold these things fast and stick to them like a true warrior, spiritual warrior.
I like it.
So I have very few enemies, but I have to acknowledge that, I do have one or two because of what they've done to my whole family relationship, or what they've tried to do in my career and all stuff.
I see.
The third one is a complete commitment, like an undying or undiminished, unrelenting commitment to truth.
I like that.
Yeah. So this is a tricky one.
Yeah.
Because Pilate said, what is truth?
Yes, right.
And I'm a Christian, and so actually I seek truth embodied in the Christ as a person. And actually, if you look at the Council of Chalcedon, you'll find that the Christians arrived first at the idea of an integral personhood because they had to deal with Jesus as truly God and truly man, in the way the Chalcedonian definition has it. Not even Plato talks about
No.
Proserpine as person in that way. He would talk about, like the other Greeks, autos, the self, and the self. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I am therefore, to quote Herbert Butterfield, a great Methodist professor of history at Cambridge University, before all else, committed to Christ, and for everything else, just uncommitted.
I love that.
But that doesn't mean to say I don't see that there's some things that are more truthful and some things that are definitely lies in the whole spectrum of knowledge. Because if you are a Christian, you are shown how to discern these things. And you'll know the truth.
Yes.
And you'll be free. You'll be free by
truth shall set you free. Yes.
And so we are living in a terrible world of QAnon and conspiracy theories. I mean, look, you name it. We'll talk about Jews again, anti-Semitism. If you go into the Middle East, anti-Semitism is everywhere anyway. It's like going to a fire temple, for example, like I did with I had to take my shoes off and both my socks had holes through the toes and I was most embarrassed. But this was in Silicon Valley.
Wow.
And when I came out, I was immediately accosted by some men in black who told me that the Jews were running the world.
Okay.
The Zionists or the Israelis, whatever it was, they said the Jews.
Right.
Well, if you want to know, for example, where that idea is most popular, I'd say Western Sydney, like Bonnyrigg. I'd say Bonnyrigg would probably be the top, where you've got two terrorists making their appearance. I mean, we have conspiracy theorists around the world that have been much longer than QAnon. QAnon was using the same sort of stuff, but it's just got very popular and crucial for American politics. So in religion and politics, you've got a situation with Trump and his very powerful American empire getting involved now in these violent conflicts, unfortunately, because he was supposed to be a president of peace. You've got the problem that his minister for war is sending apocalyptic messages to his troops because they're going into Iran. You've got the evangelicals believing that he's the man of the apocalyptic times.
Okay.
And I couldn't say really he was a Christian, by the way, this man Trump. It's just a political facade. You've got the QAnon people presenting us with conflicts now within many, many families around the world about who to believe in public affairs. And in my own family, for example, I admit, you just can't. You can't talk politics anymore because there'd be a difference that's affected by this.
A strong difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can go on. It's all to do with payback, but it's also to do with the recurrence of phenomena. There have been conspiracy theories before, and there will be conspiracy theories again. And
Mm.
I'll leave you then. This is a footnote to my constant and unrelenting attempt to defend truth.
Okay,
Yeah.
I like it. It's a good point to end on.
Okay.
Thank you so much.